Now, let me introduce you all to the resource speaker for today. Ms. Shivani Vadva is a counseling psychologist and a remedial therapist, and she's also a trainer by profession. She is a certified career coach, structure of intellect practitioner, and a phonics master trainer with over 8 years of experience in helping children with special needs. She aims to empower individuals to reach their potential emotionally and academically with a mission to promote the holistic development of children with special needs. She's also founded an organization, Samarthya, Nurture a Better You. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today, ma'am. Before I hand over the podium to you, I'd like to inform all our participants that the session would be for an hour's time. The session would begin with a presentation followed by a Q&A segment. For some time, the chat would be switched to the host and the panelist mode so that we can all focus on the speakers sharing. Wish you all a happy learning.
Thank you so much, Revati, for a wonderful introduction and a warm welcome to all of you, dear participants. Today, we'll be discussing about ADHD in classrooms, at home, and at other social settings. Let me take you through the session outline. You'll be taken through a pre-recorded concept video. Post that, we'll have a live discussion on our learnings and then a question answer segment. In this video, you'll be learning about what is ADHD, what are the causes, what is the prevalence rate of ADHD, and how ADHD manifests itself in different settings, be it the home setting, the classroom, and in other social settings. What are the challenges that children with ADHD face, and how parents and professionals can support children with ADHD to improve their outcomes. So I request you all to watch this video and then we'll have a discussion based on the learnings of it. Yes, a very good evening to all of you. Hope you're all doing great. So today's topic that I will be taking you through is on ADHD. ADHD is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. But before moving into the theoretical aspects, let us do an energizer. So all of you who are viewing me could please do it along with me so that you're all pepped up for the session. And here I have with me Miss Revati. Ma'am, are you there?
Yes, I'm there.
Yes, great. So we'll do a quick activity for our viewers so they could do the same and get energized for the session. Ready?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a quick activity which can also be used for children with ADHD. Once we are done with it, I'll tell you in which settings and why you could use this. So Revati ma'am, you know how to clap? How do we clap generally?
Like this.
Perfect. This is how we clap. And how do we snap? Wow. So now when I tell you clap, you would clap. And when I tell snap, you would snap. Are you ready to follow the instructions? All the best. Clap, clap, clap. Faster. Snap, 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 clap. Very good. So now what we would do is when I tell you clap, you would snap. And when I say snap, you would clap. Ready? Yeah. So when I say snap, you would snap, 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 clap, 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 snap, snap. Okay, good job. Thank you so much. Was it difficult in the second time for you to do?
Yes, it was. Compared
It
to
was.
the first time, it was, yeah.
Why do you think it was difficult when we did it in the second time and it took much longer time?
Because I had to reverse it. So the instruction is to reverse. So I think the pause was because of that.
Yes. So thank you, ma'am. So what exactly happened is whatever we are attuned to. So we know that clap is clap and snap is snap. What happened when I reversed my instructions? You had to process information. The quick processing is a difficulty in children with ADHD. And if you use these simple activities at the beginning of the session or in the beginning when they are going to school or teaching them a concept, that will help them to revive their attention and also come back to focus. It's a fun activity, but at the same time, you are improving their sitting tolerance, attention, and processing speed with these little activities. You could modify it where you're telling them to shout their name, you could clap, name and clap, then you reverse. That's how you could modify and make it into a fun learning activity. So now when we begin with our session, we will understand what exactly ADHD is before we move into the other concepts. So ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder, and in this disorder, it is characterized by inattention, there is excessive activity, and impulsivity. As per research, in ADHD, there are differences in the brain structure and function. So basically, it affects a child's attention, sitting tolerance, and self-control on actions. As you can see on the screen, we have the brain of a subject and the ADHD subject. So there are differences in the way the neurotransmitters are placed in the brain. So when we move on to the types of ADHD, there are three major types of ADHD. One is the inattentive type. Second is hyperactivity impulsivity. And third is the combined type. So to understand it in deeper, when we talk about type 1 ADHD, in this, the child exhibits significant inattention across different domains with no significant hyperactivity or impulsivity. So it means that when a child is having difficulty in sustaining attention, that is in all the environmental situations. It could be school, home, social situations, but there is no hyperactivity or impulsivity observed. It's just the difficulty to sustain attention, and it is all used to be known as ADD, that is attention deficit disorder. The second kind is the hyperactivity kind, where there's predominantly hyperactivity and the child does have control over attention, but the activity control or the impulse control is not in the hands of the child. So the child has difficulty in having to be able to sit for long hours at a particular given task. The third type of ADHD is the combined type, that is most commonly seen in the population of those having ADHD. In this, the child is struggling with paying attention as well as regulating their behavior. And ADHD is more common in the males than the females. And as per surveys, the ratio is 2:1. So when we talk about what exactly causes ADHD, there is no one definitive cause that we could say that, okay, yes, because of this ADHD cause, there are a lot of factors that could lead to ADHD. The first thing is the genetics. As per research, ADHD tends to run in families. The next cause that has been found is that when there are differences in the brain function and structure. The smaller brain areas in the frontal lobe will have imbalance in the neurotransmitter like dopamine. Hence, it makes it difficult for them to focus as well as control themselves. Then there are also certain prenatal factors like poor nutrition during pregnancy, certain infections, smoking, drinking, substance abuse. All of this affects the child's brain development and in turn could lead to conditions like ADHD. There could also be premature delivery, low birth weight that increase the risk of ADHD in children. Then sometimes there is a brain injury or a brain disorder where there is damage caused to the frontal lobe and that causes problems in controlling the impulses and the emotions. So it could be either of these reasons that are being a cause for ADHD. So when we talk about the prevalence of ADHD, ADHD is the most common and prevalent mental disorder in children. The worldwide prevalence is 5.3%, and in India, it is between 1.6 to 17.9%. And basically, when we have to talk about ADHD, ruling out of comorbid conditions is also very, very important. And it is usually diagnosed in the early ages of school-going children. So yes, we have an other activity. So as we are progressing, we'll be doing certain activities where you could also take part of it. And these activities can again be used to improve a skill that we'll be focusing on. Yes, Revati ma'am, are you there?
Yes, I'm there.
So I'll be showing you something on the screen. I want you to do as directed. So here, I want you to find out where is the odd Pokemon out. Can you find the odd one out?
Oh, the third line, second one.
Yes, the third line, second one. This is the odd Pokemon out. Thank you. Next, when I move ahead, what can you spot the differences for me, please?
So in the first one, you have a bush here near the tree, which is missing in the second picture.
Okay.
Then the pony of the girl, she has two here, but here
Yes.
she just had one.
Yes.
The way that the shell looks here, right next to the cake, can you see
Yes.
one of the that's missing there? And also the shape near the bucket.
The shape near the bucket, right?
And the bucket also looks different. It has a blue, this one here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think pretty much everything is same.
Yes, this one leaf that is there. Okay, so when we were doing these activities, what do you think you used here?
I think I had to pay attention to both of it at the same time and like compare it.
Yes, you had to pay attention, you had to compare it. Yes, someone told that the spots on the dress are also missing. Yes, absolutely. So the skill that you're using is vision. You are using your visual perceptual skills. You are trying to pay attention. You're trying to jump from one figure to other, remembering and giving an immediate recall as to what could be missing and doing it. So the major skill that is used here basically is your focus, concentration, visual perception, and the ability to pay attention to the task that is being given. So, when we talk about children with ADHD, they face unique challenges in their attention. So, they have difficulty sustaining attention for a longer period of time. And to build on their attention, you could use these kind of activities. But when you are working with them in an activity based setting, please start from the easiest thing and then move to the grade level aspects so that they could build up on their confidence as well. So in different settings, whether it's a social setting, school setting, one-on-one, so the unique challenges that they face for inattention are as follows. So there is lack of focus. They have difficulty paying attention to details. They get easily distracted by extraneous stimuli. So basically, if they're doing a particular activity and they hear a pencil drop or somebody just passing by or talking, it's sudden shift of attention that they have. They have difficulty in staying focused on the topic when they are talking as well. They don't listen to or follow instructions as expected. They have difficulty paying attention to details. So over here, when we were doing spot the differences, you are paying attention to the details. So they miss out on details. Here, it was a little easier. Over here, you had to get into the intricate details. So that is very, very difficult for them, and they are also reluctant to engage in a task that requires sustained mental effort. Over here, they need to sustain their mental effort, so they try avoiding it. So it is important that we start from these simple activities, make them do so that they get comfortable, and then move on to the more difficult ones to build on their attentions. So when we talk about what would be the unique challenges that they face in the different settings, would be there's going to be constant fidgeting and squirming. If we talk about hyperactivity, they'll be moving around frequently, and they are always on the go. They have difficulty in working quietly. They have trouble sitting and completing their work or any task on hand. They have risky behaviors like climbing and jumping frequently, behaving in a physically violent way. So, one encounter that I had with an ADHD child who was on the combined thing, but more on the hyperactivity side, the risky behaviors were too high. So, he would climb on the almiras, or he would jump from the 10th step to the down thing, or some things which are very, very risky is what you could see. And those are the unique challenges that they face. The next we could see is the unique challenges in cases of impulsivity. When they talk about impulsivity, what happens is that there is impatience. They have difficulty waiting for their turn. Before the teacher finishes asking them the question, they have started to blurt out the answers. They're constantly interrupting the conversations that the others are having. They don't think and act. They snatch of things from others without permission. They are careless about their own things. And you could also see that there are constant temper tantrums at times. So these are the different challenges that they could face when they have inattention, hyperactivity, or impulsivity. So now I would be talking about a case study scenario. So there was a mother who brings her 8-year-old son for evaluation after he is suspended from school for jumping on his seat, teasing other children, and not following directions. He spends 2 to 3 hours a night with homework that he never successfully completes. The mother wants to know what is wrong with the child. She consults, and how would you want to go about this kind of a scenario? So definitely when we see that over here, it's more of a behavioral problem that is interrupting the academics of the child. So we need to prioritize what kind of a problem it is and then move into how we could help the child. So here, if you see that jumping, teasing, not following directions, it's more of a behavioral concern. So we could think of diagnosis or evaluating it into ADHD. For evaluation or diagnosis, we could get into the ADHD assessment tools or the rating scale. So when we talk about diagnosis, the diagnosis of ADHD is definitely difficult because we do not have any scans or tests, and children usually have issues with self-control, or is it actually only ADHD? It is difficult to distinguish. Sometimes there could be comorbid conditions as well, like there could be conduct disorders, there could be other conditions like language issues or dyslexia in which similar behaviors are occurring. So it is very, very important that we use these standardized assessment tools for diagnosis. It is very important that the assessment tools are filled by both parents and teachers to track the behaviors at home and school. It is important to know that in different settings it is happening, and only then can you say that it is ADHD. It cannot just happen in one setting and not happening in the other setting, because children with ADHD have challenges in all settings in which they are placed. So if it is happening only in one setting, we need to scrutinize and see what exactly is being the trigger. In general, usually it is stated that stimulants or medication can be of great help to children with ADHD. The most commonly prescribed medications are the stimulants who work on the dopamine levels of the brain. So when they work on the dopamine receptor, that helps to manage their hyperactivity and impulsivity. But medication is the last sought option for children with ADHD. You could try the non-medication methods or the interventions to help children cope up with ADHD. The other thing we get into is behavior modification. Since it's a behavioral concern, behavior modification could be of help, where we are teaching them ways to replace the bad behavior with the good ones. So what helps is we have to make very simple and clear ground rules. So when they lose control, they need to face the consequences. The consequences are not too high that the child is beaten or the child is restricted from a lot of things, but things that you mutually decide with the child that if you lose control, to help you control yourself, I would be using timeouts and you would be losing your privileges like TV time or play time. Those little things can be taken, but you need to see what strategy works for which child. It is not necessary that these kind of things will work for every child. For some, social skill training; for some, behavior modification; for some, medication. All of these are seen based on the level of ADHD the child is experiencing. It is important when we are working on behavior modification, when we are giving them consequences for losing control. On the other hand, we also need to watch out for their good behavior where we are encouraging and rewarding them. Rewarding does not need to be materialistic, it could also be verbal praise. So it is two-way. It is when the children lose control as when they are exhibiting good behavior. Our things towards them has to be there, either a consequence or a reward or praise. Sometimes we could also give them psychotherapy if it is an adolescent, to help them manage or handle their emotions and frustration. Family counseling, psychoeducation could help parents so that they could support children with ADHD. Social skills training can be there where they are having group sessions in with special educators where they are learning to take turns, they are learning sharing, which is very difficult for them. So when teachers are working with them, when parents are working with them, when they are psychoeducated about the condition, it is much more easier to work with them. So there are certain natural remedies also as per research where dietary supplements with omega-3 have been shown some kind of a benefit to children with ADHD. Also, it is said that sugar does not cause ADHD, but a sugar rush can make the conditions a little more worse. So it's always better to avoid sweets when we are working for children with ADHD, like the junk food or the cream biscuits, you have the donuts, which they love indulging in, needs to be cut down. There are certain lifestyle modifications also that can be made for these kind of children. So a healthy diet with a lot of fruits, with a lot of veggies, a whole lot of, grains, proteins is going to help them. Exercise is very, very important for children with ADHD. Why do we say exercise is important? Because what exactly happens is that there's a lot of physical, energy in them. The moment they have a lot of physical energy in them, there needs to be an outlet of it. So the outlet comes out when they are not able to control their impulses. So they indulge in things which could not have a negative effect, like they would indulge in quarreling, they would be troubling the others, or they would be indulging in excessive movement on the go in situations in which it is not expected. So if they have a particular routine in which they can exercise or they can, let their physical energy out in a proper way, it could be beneficial for them. So studies have also shown that exercise can help them control impulses and the other behavioral problems that they are facing. So many of them, what do we say, are getting indulged in physical activities like football, basketball, you see tennis. So any sport that requires a lot of energy and there's an energy draining could be really helpful for children with ADHD, specifically in the morning hours before going to school, so that they have released their extra energy and now are in frame to get into the learning pattern. And also during classes, sometimes we could give them physical movement breaks. Exercises will help them channel their energy and also teach them social skills. For example, if they are going for basketball, in basketball training, yes, there is physical activity. At the same time, social skills like sharing, waiting for their turn, trying to grab the ball, all these things are also sought. Yes, therapeutic interventions are there, but these little lifestyle modifications also help them. It is important to limit their time on the electronic devices. Now, there has been a shift due to the global pandemic that everything has become on screen. But if it is an active screen time where there's some kind of learning taking place, we can indulge in. But on the other hand, when they keep playing games, watching not useful videos and all of it that is eating up their time, it definitely affects them. And as per research nowadays going on, more the screen time, lesser the attention span is what is told. So it is better to keep them away from the electronic devices as much as possible and make them indulgent into playing with other children, playing board games, or you spending time with your child as an alternative. Getting plenty of sleep is also very important, and simplifying their distractions, simplifying their room. For example, if there are a lot of things, lots of toys around them, then it is important that we organize things. The moment they see organization, they try to get into it. And it's always important when you have ADHD child or an experience with it, keep your surroundings minimal, because they tend to go and touch, they tend to go and explore a lot of things. So it is always advisable that the moment they could focus and less distraction could happen. So when we talk about teachers, these could be a few useful things where teachers or even whoever is working or special education teachers, when we give them clear one-step directions, it makes it easier for them to remember, recall, and get the task done. Teach students to check in with themselves that, okay, what is happening to me? Am I going out of control? Am I not able to focus? The moment you teach them to check in with themselves, they start acting upon. Again, it is for a little older children who understand that. It is important when we are working with ADHD children, we can incorporate movement in them during the lessons. So as I started off with an energizer, these little energizers will help them pep up. A lot of movement is happening, and that's how they can be brought back into the focus. It is important that the ADHD child's brain is given break between the lessons. Set a timer for work sessions. They know that, okay, I'm going to sit for this time. I'm going to complete my work. I'm going to get a break. So that's a motivation for them. Don't give a break after 1.5 hours when they are already exhausted and have taken a break from the past half an hour. So we really need to set realistic and achievable goals when we are working with them. In between, we had certain things known as fidget spinners, and these can help children with ADHD when they are too restless. You could give it to them and teach them how to use it to bring them into their sense of calm. Visuals can be used with them to set reminders around them in their room that, okay, I have to do this, I'm controlling myself, my homework is there, my to-do list, all those things. You could provide them with flexible seating options because sitting at one place is very, very difficult. See, when we are trying to modify their behavior, sometimes environmental modifications are also very, very important. We can't be like we are only focusing on the child and the child has to improve. Understood. But then at the same time, if you make the environment more child friendly, it adds on to help them cope better. We could also play attention boosting games. There were a lot of board games where they used to sit and do learn, and there's something known as brain vita. I don't know if you are aware of. Brain vita really helps them to sustain attention. Chess is also an attention boosting game. Any kind of a physical activity like basketball, football, tennis, all of these would definitely help children. Incorporating a learning style where they have, the auditory, kinesthetic, visual learning aids and the hands-on activities helps improve their learning. Student interest in lessons is there when you make it more fun loving, and when you have to work with these children and you feel that their attention is not there and you have to give out an important information, you could use chime, you could use a bell, set any one sound and train them that whenever I do this sound, you have to focus because it's an important information that I'm letting you out. So there's conditioning that is taking place. So you could condition them when you have to give an important information. So teachers could do that when in a classroom with a lot of students, when you have to do it, it would be beneficial for all of them when you're conditioning that a bell means an important information where everybody has to learn to focus. Okay, there is an other activity now. Revati ma'am?
Yes.
Yes. Can you randomly draw? You have an A4 size sheet.
Yeah.
Right? On the back side, the space is there. Right? One side we drew line. I quickly want you to randomly draw these things. I want the others also, if you're viewing and have a pen and book in front of you, just draw these things as they come into your mind. A rainbow, a house, few clouds, trees, bird, and car. Randomly. I'm not seeing your drawing skill, but here I'm going to see something else which I'll tell you. So you draw rainbow, house, cloud, tree, bird, and car. Done?
Please don't judge my drawing skills.
No problem. I just want you to check. Great. Can you just check, is it like this? Have you drawn? Is it the car beside the house and the rainbow and the clouds, then the tree and the bird beside?
No.
Can you check how many have you drawn correctly?
There's the house in the center and the rainbow near the clouds.
Okay.
Just that.
No, nothing correct? Can I see it in the screen if you could show it? Yes. So ma'am has, okay, fine. So why do you think that you were not able to draw as I drew? Thank you so much. Revati ma'am, why do you think it did not come the same? Because I told you what all are there in the drawing, right? I told you we want a rainbow, we want a car, we want a bird. But why do you think that it did not come like this?
Because
What was missing?
I think you didn't tell me the exact position on where you wanted all of it.
Correct. Yes, I did not tell you what was exactly expected. I did not tell you the direction. I did not help you through it, nor I allowed you to model what was shown. Thank you so much. So it is very important through this activity when you are working with children with ADHD, what we expect from them needs to be clearly and explicitly stated. Or you could model a kind of behavior or anything that you're teaching them. If you model it, it becomes easier. Over here, if I would have told them that this is how I want you to first draw a rainbow, then draw two clouds, under that draw a house, on the right draw the tree, on the left draw the car, or vice versa, and then the bird sitting down under the tree, that's when I would have got the result as I expected. So the moment we work with any children and specifically with ADHD, very important to give clear and specific instructions. That's when you and the child would be on the same page. Another activity that you could do when you're working in your sessions is you could give them all these images. The worksheets would be shared with you where you tell them to draw as it comes in your imagination. Sometimes drawing also helps children to control their impulses, develop better sitting tolerance, and improve their creativity. So when we talk about the role of parents, as discussed earlier, the language needs to be simple. What is expected from them needs to be told to them that this is what I am expecting out of you. There needs to be a clarity in simple terms. And it is very important to be involved as parents. Keeping a clear schedule and routine definitely helps. Whether we are working with children with ADHD or we are a parent or a professional, it is very, very important that you are getting as much as information about it, because ADHD is one term. There are a lot of students, children out there who are affected by it, but it affects each one of them differently. So we need to know what exactly is the trigger point, what is the symptom of ADHD that particular child is having, or what is the struggle that the child is going through being an ADHD. So we need to see how ADHD has impacted the child that you're working with. So try to learn as much as possible. Communicate clearly with them what is expected honestly with your child. Give simple, clear instructions. Focus only on your child when you're talking to them. Anyway, they get distracted when there's no direct communication. So, what usually happens is that we are on a gadget or we are doing some other work and then talking to them, things won't be set. So, it is very important that when we are talking with an ADHD child, we are 100% for them. As a parent or professional, we need to model the positive behaviors, be consistent with what is expected. That is, be consistent with discipline, and also ensure that the others who are working with the child are also following the same. For example, a child, you have made a pact with the child where you say that if you blurt out answer in the class, you would be missing out on your playtime. So when that is decided, that needs to be consistently practiced. It is not that one time the child does, I leave the child. Next time the child does, I'm giving a consequence. Third and fourth time, I leave the child. Fifth time, I give the consequence. So when there's no consistency with discipline, the child would also take the ground rules for, granted. And there would not be any kind of an effect that the child would be showing. So it is very, very important that we are being consistent in whatever methodology we are following while working for children with special needs. Reward good behavior. When we talk about consequences being consistent, at the same time rewarding with good behavior, verbal praise, high five, stickers, stars, all of them make them motivated. Encourage your child's strengths. Many of them have a lot of strength in sports, out of school activities. Encourage it. Keep in close contact with your child's pediatrician if any for diet school teachers or your therapist so that all of you could work together to provide the best environment for children with ADHD. You, as a parent, I know there are a lot of emotions that are running in you. You get overwhelmed when we have to deal with a child with special needs in general. Parenting itself sometimes gets overwhelming. You could also join a support group to learn from other parents' experiences who have had the same kind of challenges. When we talk about the role of special educator, we need to understand that, or anybody working with a child with ADHD, that it is important to be patient. And for a child with ADHD, controlling is going to definitely be affected. So our patience and guidance every day is sought as therapists. We are also to use clear communication, be consistent with whatever statements we give out to the child. We work one on one to improve their attention, sometimes to improve their sitting skills, but we could work in smaller groups for providing social skills training where they learn to control their impulses of blurting out answers, awaiting their turn. So you could formulate the individualized counseling and education plan for the child so that we know in what direction it's going on. Engaging activities like we have done a few, and I'll be doing a few more worksheets. Similar can be used to work on the cognitive abilities of their attention span and sitting tolerance. Very important, we give only one instruction or direction at a time and with eye contact. So these children cannot process too many things or get bombarded with too many things from the environment. The moment we start giving them a step by step or chunked information, they're able to do it much better. So providing structure and consistency is very important, as previously stated. The environment or the room in which they would be focusing upon or building upon their skills needs to be uncluttered, calm environment and atmosphere, less of distractions so that the child could learn to focus better. So when you are working with these children, you have to give them ample of warnings before you expect the child to change activity. So you should be like, I will take this away, I will do that. You have to reiterate to the child. Again, physical breaks for movement in session, it does not mean that they always need to take a round and come back. It could also mean the energizer, sit, stand, walk, stop, reverse it. All these things also help these children. We can offer love. We need to actually, not can, should. It's always good when we are providing them love and support because the child is actually trying, but it's not happening. It's important that we are in good communication with others that care for the child, and we are always in communication with the parent to provide them feedback as to how the child has been doing. So these are certain references for you. Now you've seen what is the manifestation of ADHD, the challenges of inattention, the challenges of hyperactivity and impulsivity. So let's discuss a few things where I would like you all to share your responses in the chat box. Okay, so I would like you all to tell me a few examples or few scenarios or situations where you can feel that the child is being inattentive. It could be at home, classroom, or other social settings. So you could drop in your answers in the chat box where you see that inattention is being a concern. Disturbance from the environment. Okay, they get distracted, noisy, roaming around, jumping, not focusing, can't stay in one place. Okay, noisy, running, not listening, pinching, disturbing others, shouting, complaining, unruly behavior. Inattention. If there is inattention, can you give me a scenario? For example, if I tell you the child does not complete the task on time, not attentive. If the child is not paying attention, the child is not completing the task on time. Can you give me such scenarios? Okay, task is not done, uses erasers a lot, easily distracted, misses lectures, not being responsive, right? So when we talk about inattention, it is the activities of daily life that the child does. Child tends to make daily mistakes. The information processing is not accurate. So if I tell a child that you're expected to, bring your book from the bag and open page number 79. If the child is not attentive, it becomes very difficult. So information is not processed accurately, careless mistakes in homework, notes are not completed. All of these are things that are caused because of inattention. I've got an exhaustive list in the chat box. Yes, not following instruction, too much hyper, playful. Yes, so all of these points could also come to the question too when I ask you if you had to suggest instances where hyperactivity is reflected. How do you know that the child is being hyperactive in their behaviors? What would you say at that point of time? Arguing with other students, okay. Interrupting the teacher, aggressive, roaming around, okay. Throwing things, moving, no focus, cannot wait for their turn, jumping, okay, talking a lot, right? Seeking attention, poor sitting tolerance, not listening, shouting, distracting others, no focus. Right. So when we talk about hyperactivity, you see them all over the place. They would be fidgety, they cannot sit still. The sitting tolerance of a child is affected in all the environments. When we talk about difficulty controlling impulses, can you state instances where there is a difficulty faced by the child in controlling impulses? Pushing others, okay. Shouting, humming music, not listening to the complete sentences, blurting out answers, wonderful. Always on the go, interrupting others, throwing tantrums, pushing, pulling, doesn't listen, harming others, picks up fight, shouting while moving, dropping things, aggressiveness, throwing. Great, wonderful, exhaustive list here again that you all have learned from the video. When we talk about impulse control, it's that they cannot wait for their turn. They blurt out answers, they pick up fights, anything to do with turn taking and controlling and waiting. And there's a long wait period between different tasks, it becomes difficult for them to control their impulses. So to sum it up, you have to remember that children with ADHD show a persistent pattern. It's not just for a shorter duration. It's a persistent pattern of inattention and or hyperactivity and impulsivity that is affecting their day-to-day functioning and in turn their development. And remember, for children with ADHD, their difficulty is to be in at least two settings. So if they are facing a challenge in home setting, that similar thing should also be shown in the classroom and other social settings. Only then it could be categorized that the child could be at risk of developing ADHD. Even for diagnosis, two settings are taken into consideration. And to help children with ADHD effectively, it is important that we identify the unique challenge that that child is facing, because ADHD is not same across children. For some, it may be a issue of inattention. For somebody, it is they're not able to have a sitting tolerance. For somebody else, it could be problem in self-regulation. So we need to identify what is the unique challenge that the particular child is facing in a setting. It could be the home, classroom, or social setting, and then plan out the intervention based on the challenges. And another thing to remember is to be consistent. When you're consistent in the intervention and your application of whatever management strategy you have planned for your child, it becomes easier for the child to show improved outcomes. So when we understand what is the difficulty, you would be able to effectively plan the intervention, and to get the desired outcome. Consistency in working with these children is very, very important. Thank you so much. And now we'll move on to the Q&A.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for an informative and engaging session. Before we begin with our Q&A discussion for today, I'd like to inform all the participants and take them through a few things. For all of you who have been asking about all the materials with regard to today's session, with that of the slide deck, the resources, the overview document, and the recording, this is the place where you will find all the materials with regard to today's session available at one place. The recording of today's session would be uploaded 2 to 3 days post the completion of event. And not only that, you once you scroll down, you'll also be able to find all the upcoming sessions down. Do check out the upcoming events at Ability and do register for events that's of interest to you. The link for this is being shared right now in the chat box. I'd like to reiterate, if you have benefited from today's session, that don't forget to share this link with anyone who you think would benefit from it. And I'd like to share with you all that a lot of time and effort goes on in producing the events as well as the resources which are available on our page. If you have benefited from our sessions and our resources, don't forget to share them with anyone who you think would benefit from it. And also, take your first step in becoming an Ability Inclusion Champion to advocate for Ability's mission and bring a positive change to the world around. I'd like to give you a glimpse of the upcoming sessions that we have in the month of February and also in the March. We have the next session on prerequisites to improve handwriting skills for children with special needs, which will be happening on the 17th of February at 4:30 p.m. Indian time, 6 p.m. Indonesian time, 7 p.m. Singapore and Philippines time, which will be conducted by Dr. Neeta Mehta. Following that, we have another session on the 5th of March, focusing on strategies and techniques to improve handwriting skills for children with academic challenges and also children with special needs. The link for registering for both the event is being shared right now in the chat box. Do register yourself for the event and book your slot because we have very, very limited slots available. And also, don't forget to share the link with anyone who you think would benefit from it so they can also learn and benefit more. Now, let's begin with our Q&A session for today. Ma'am, are you ready to take the first question for today?
Yes, sure.
The first question is from Ms. Farida, who wants to know, we spoke about a lot of unique challenges that children with ADHD face, but are there any differences in the early signs that we can identify? What is the age in which we can look out for this sign? That's the first question that we have.
A very nice question. So when you have to talk about the early signs, definitely you look out for, is the child able to pay attention? What are the activity levels of the child? Is the child able to control? Is there self-regulatory behavior? That is the child waiting for his or her turn? So these things need to be observed. But if you observe these in the period of 2 to 7 years of the child, it shows that the child is at risk of developing ADHD. But a proper diagnosis can only be made at the age of 7 years and above. So until then, the child is at risk of developing, and early signs are very similar to the signs that we discussed in the inattention, where the child is not able to focus, complete the task, process information accurately, or it could be in hyperactivity where the child is fidgeting, always on the go, or in the terms of impulsivity where the child is blurting out answers, not able to control, wait for his or her turn. So you wait for all these things, observe over a period of at least 6 months. And then if it is below 7 years, it is the child is at risk, and 7 years and above, you need to go for further evaluation and diagnosis.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for clarifying on those lines. There's another extension question from most of our participants on this line. They want to know, why is early intervention or early diagnosis important? What happens if the child is not diagnosed early?
So early intervention is very, very important. What happens is that as the child is growing, the child has to meet different demands of each age that the child is in. So if the child is not helped at the right time, the gap is there in acquiring the skill set. For example, the child is 8 years and you have identified that the child is struggling, but we say that with age, as the child grows, things would get better. And now the child is of 10 years. So the 2 years in which the child could have been worked upon get lost. The precious years where the child could be built upon the skill set. So any time or any moment you observe these red flag signs, it's extremely important to observe for a longer period of time and start working. Always, it's not necessary that a diagnosis has to be there. If you feel that your child is inattentive, you can engage in attention boosting activities where you engage the child in playing puzzles, Board games where the child, if sitting tolerance is an issue, you can engage the child in reading. And these little activities will help improve the skill set. We don't always need a diagnosis per se. So the earlier we start the intervention, it becomes better for the child to cope with the issue that he or she is facing. So early diagnosis will lead to early intervention. So all of it goes hand in hand. It's very important to watch out for early signs and start providing intervention early so that as the child grows, the child is able to meet the age level requisites.
So it's all about ensuring that the child is able to meet the age or grade level requisites, and also the gap of the skills is not that evident or it's not that drastic. That's the key why early intervention is important. Next, we have a question from Ms. Unanta Mani, who wants to know, does children with ADHD have a different learning style compared to children who are neurotypical? Or do they also have the similar learning styles or learning patterns that we have for common children?
So when we talk about learning styles, we have the VARK model, visual, auditory, read, write, and kinesthetic, and that's applicable to all children, whether they are special needs or neurotypical children. But if you have to identify the learning style of children with ADHD, it is all about exploration. You need to work with them, try out which learning style are they better able to learn through, and you apply that so that they learn whatever you need to teach them in a better way and faster. So as the saying goes, we teach the child in a way they learn. So learning styles definitely play a very, very important role so that they are engaged with you. At the same time, their interest is there. So the learning styles are always from the VARK model you could pick up. Plan your activities based on it, try it out and figure out what is the learning style of that child. Each child or each individual has their unique learning style. We need to identify and plan the intervention based on the learning styles.
So VARK is the key to understanding all learning style, and it is common for all children. Next, we have a question from Ms. Marin Francia, who wants to know that how can she as an educator or a teacher tell the parent that the child is having the symptoms of ADHD? Can teachers be the right person to take this decision and inform the parents, or is there another way that they can put this forward to the parent?
Great. This is a very important question. As teachers, it is definitely a struggle to put forth it to the parents because, yes, when parents are looking at the child day in, day out, they are also working with the child. And when we directly tell them that your child has a difficulty, it becomes really difficult for the parents also to accept. Teachers could not explicitly state that, okay, it could be ADHD because a diagnosis has not been done. So you could refer it to your school counselor. If that is not there and you want to convey it to the parent, it has to be done in a very, very subtle way. Teachers play an important role because they are key observers in the school setting. At home setting, it is the parents. So in the school setting, you could tell the parent that I feel that the child is having difficulty sitting for longer periods of time, hours, or the child's work is incomplete, child is not able to focus attention. So you could pick up 3 or 4 major challenges, talk it out to the parent, inform the parent that at school setting this is happening. Could you ask the parent as to how is the child in the home setting? Is the parent also feeling the same? It's very important to first build rapport with the parent where you talk about the strengths. Then you talk about these challenges that I had told you. Ask whether they are also there in the home setting. Only when the parent kind of accepts that, yes, I also find these challenges, you can very subtly inform the parent that, yes, the child is facing a difficulty. Why not we get the child evaluated by a psychologist? Or they could seek the help of a developmental pediatrician. It depends on the age of the child. Based on that, once the parent goes and discusses it with the professional, that's when the parent also understands what the child is going through. It may be ADHD, it may not be ADHD, it could also be another comorbid issue that the child is going through. So it is extremely important that as a teacher, we explain the challenges the child is facing and ask the parent to seek help of a professional instead of labeling or diagnosing a child is what I would recommend.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So having a collaborative approach would be the key to it. Next, we have a question from Ms. Elsie and also Faith Isabesai, who wants to know, can children with ADHD outgrow the condition or is it naturally curable? What is your take on it?
Okay, so when we talk about ADHD, I won't say it is naturally curable. Yes, you identify it, you work towards developing strategies that work for the child. So once you identify the strategies or you start working on it over a period of a year or so, these strategies become imbibed in you and the level of difficulty or the challenges that you face comes down. And with practice and over the years, the individual or the child with ADHD learns to live with it and copes better with the challenges. It does not go away or it's not cured completely. It is just that we identify what works for an individual or a child with ADHD. So it is important while you're working for children with ADHD, you would see that the difficulty levels or the challenges intensity is coming down, but it won't go away. So over a course earlier, it used to be like in a day they used to blurt out or, not able to control the impulses at all. But with intervention and with supportive strategies, they're able to do it 75% of the times. So I won't say it's curable, but definitely manageable with the right amount of intervention.
So ADHD is manageable with the right amount of intervention. That is the key takeaway from today's learning, at least for me. Next, we have a question from Ms. Mac Harvey, who wants to know, is there any changes in the assessment or evaluation pattern that teachers have to incorporate to understand if the child with ADHD is able to perform to grade level, because most children with ADHD also tend to have academic challenges. So how is that the teacher or an educator can know if the child is meeting the grade or age level expectation?
So when it comes to evaluation or understanding their level as per academics of a child with ADHD, accommodations and modifications are provided by each board. So if the child has been diagnosed by a clinical person here back in India, a clinical psychologist, and if the report states that the child has only ADHD, for example, and we are not considering the other comorbid conditions, the child is provided certain accommodations and modifications. For example, extra time to complete the work. It could also be that oral evaluations are taken or questions could be read. So depending on the severity of the condition, accommodations and modifications are provided where the parents could seek help of the school management and the school counselor to plan out what would work best for their child. So if you feel that the child needs certain amount of support, even in a classroom, if the child is getting a lot distracted when work is going on or the child is disturbing other students in the class, the child could be made to sit near the teacher. Or if it's an online virtual setting, the child could be given verbal cues or prompts to focus. So again, depending on what is a unique challenge of the child, we need to plan out. Definitely, there are accommodations and modifications provided. You could change your evaluation patterns based on the severity and depending on which board the child is in. If it's a CBSE, ICSE, IB board. So each of them have their own set of rules as to how these children can be catered to.
So visiting the board's website and updating is a key aspect to it to understand what are the concessions that are being offered. Next, we have a question from Ms. Rosary, who wants to know what can be done when the child with ADHD is very aggressive or physically hurtful in nature, when they have a tendency to hurt fellow friends or like fellow classmates and also the teacher. What can be done in such cases?
Okay. So when we talk about aggression, we also have to identify where is this aggression stemming from. Any kind of behavior that the child is engaging in would have an antecedent or a trigger point. So it's very important to observe. Observation is extremely important in working with children to bring out the desired outcomes. So you observe them over a period of time when that particular is aggression episodes are happening. So once you observe, you see that there could be a trigger point that is causing. One is that. Secondly, you have to talk it out also to the child as to why the child is being aggressive. Also depends on the age of the child. Has the child seen this kind of behavior in their environment? Is it some emotional turmoil the child is going through and the child is not able to explain, but it's coming out through aggression? There are a lot of factors that can contribute to it. A thorough evaluation is needed based on the age. So a few things I had stated here, it could be the environment where the child has observed, it could be child not being able to express, or it could be any trigger point that the child has been going through. So it's very important that you see where the child stands, and a thorough evaluation of the surrounding and the feelings of the child taken into consideration have to be done before I could actually tell you how you could help. So at this point of time, if you ask me, I would say be observant of the surroundings. Once you are aware of what is happening with the child in and around, you'll be able to understand the child better to help him or her better. If it's an adolescent, it's a different way to go again. So it depends on the age of the child as well.
So observation is the first and the key aspect to going about it in this situation. Next, we have a question from Ms. Rowena, who wants to know, because the physical setting of the school is also starting up for most people, at least in India. They want to know how can they manage children with ADHD who tend to shout or start roaming around in a classroom setting while the classroom discussion is going on. Do you have any tips for the teachers out there?
Yes. Now we might be coming back to the physical settings after a very, very long time. And there'll be many students who would have difficulty of sitting tolerance. It's not that they would have ADHD, but because they have lost touch with that kind of pattern or behaviors. So when they come back here, as I told you in the presentation, it's very important to give them movement breaks. The brain breaks are extremely important. So even as a teacher, when you come to the class and you have to start a class after two teachers already explaining a particular lesson. So the moment you could come, I could give you a few tips that before you start the class, energize them. Simple activity of how we started with clap and snap, or Simon Says, or just taking a turn in their place, revolving jump and sit, jump and sit. These things will stimulate them and also energize their brain and activate it. So at that point of time, you are giving them a break from the monotony that they have been into of listening to lectures. So engage these children in it. And after, like, say 15 to 20 minutes, again, to bring back all of their attention, you can engage in a smaller one. I understand while we are doing a lesson or explaining children, it becomes difficult for us to switch from an activity to the lesson, but it will be very important for you all to do that, because if students are coming back from the virtual world to the physical classrooms, there will be a lot of fidgetness and the restlessness that they would have developed, because for over like 2 years now, they have not experienced that classroom environment. So for them to sit throughout at home, even if they are in front of the system, the camera might be on. We do not know what is happening behind. So they might be taking their own breaks at their leisure. But as a teacher, if you want to bring them back into the system, it's very, very important that we give breaks in between. You could ask them questions. It's not an activity. You could also pause from the lesson and ask them questions as to what they understood, or ask them spellings, something in which you are engaging a two-way communication. That's extremely important. So these would be my tips.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for those valuable tips there. We have an extension question on the similar lines from Ms. Joanna, who wants to know how much should this break time be ideal for? Like after a child has completed a task or a work, how long should be this break for?
This break again differs from child to child. There's no manual that, okay, I have to give a 2 minute break or a 10-minute break. Again, depends on severity. For example, there are certain children I used to work with, they could only sustain attention for 10 minutes and they needed at least a minute or 30-second break in between, where they could have a round and come back, sip a water. On the other hand, I had children who would sit at a stretch for 20 minutes and need a 5-minute break. So it differs. You have to identify what is the need of your child, again the severity level of ADHD. So you have to observe what works for your child and give it. Sometimes if that activity is interesting and engaging, they would be sustaining their attention for a longer period of time. So that time you could cut down on your break. But if you see the child is getting restless, the speed of the child in writing has come down, or the child is just looking at you that, okay, I don't think I'm able to pull through it, pause. Because if the child is not in the zone to write or do that task, the child will take the double time to complete it. And it would cause friction between you as a parent and the child, or professional and the child. So stop at that point, tell okay, or at least talk, communicate where there's a distraction from the work. After a minute or so, ask the child to again come back to that. So different children have different ways of breaks, but I would say don't extend the break to such a long time that they get involved in the activity and do not want to come back on the task. So you could give them minimal things of 1 minute, 2 minutes, maximum 5 minutes if they have worked for 20 minutes at a stretch.
So understanding the child's level and customizing it is very, very important. Next, as we are running short of time, we'll take the last few questions for today. The next question is from Miss Marigold, who wants to know what are some of the ways in which teachers and educators can get and again maintain the attention of children with ADHD throughout the session, because children tend to get disengaged or disinterested while the session is going on. So what are your tips for teachers to maintain their attention for a very long period of time?
Okay, yes. As we've been talking about teachers a lot, teachers play a very, very important role. Managing children in a, like you would have like 30 children, different, schools have different number ratio for a teacher. On an average, it's like 25 to 35 children in a classroom. Amongst that, if you have a child who's frequently losing attention or not having that sitting tolerance, it definitely gets challenging and overwhelming. What you could do is you could develop a pact with the child. This could be one tip where you could say that I would call out your name when I see you getting distracted. I won't say anything else. This has to be discussed with the child on one-on-one, not in front of the entire class, because it could tend to demotivate the child. So talk it out to the child, being like, I see you getting distracted. What I would want you to do is be focused. So being focused, you could also tell her, I'm going to show you a yellow sticker. That means that you have to start focusing on the work you are in. And when this pact is followed by the child, remember to appreciate. After the class, pause back, tell the child, I appreciate that you understood the cue that I was trying to give you. I want you to keep up with this kind of things in the near classes as well. So you have to practice it with the child. It's not going to come with once or twice. You need to practice it with the child. It is going to take time. As told, consistency is the key. The more the child engages and understands the cues or prompts that you're giving, it becomes easier. If it is a physical classroom, teachers tend to roam around. If you see that the child is not focusing, you can give a pat on the back. It's a non-verbal cue that the child needs to focus. Or you could also have a buddy system where other child is helping the child to stay focused and complete the task. So again, depends on what environment are you in. If it's at home, the parent could act as a prompter and see that if the child is not working, they could do it. And a distraction-free environment, extremely important. If there's clutter around, disorganization, lot of things around them, they tend to get distracted. And the more colorful items around them, they would be looking at it. So it's very important to keep their surroundings minimal with only the requisite things that they require. So with all these things, it could help improve the attention of children in the class.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for some valuable insights there. Let's take the last question for today from Mr. Bahar Milwala, who wants to know that the child with ADHD tends to get bored and also has a very less attention span and is not able to stick to any task or activity that is given to the child. So what can be done as parents or as educators to ensure that the child is completing the task?
Okay. Task completion definitely is a challenge either for parents or for teachers for children with ADHD. So you have to chunk the task. So anything when it comes to task completion, struggle would be to initiate the task. Yes, you have to get the child to getting the task done by, or sometimes you would have to tell that only if you finish this, you could go and have your playtime, or it comes as a part of the routine that they sit to study from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. But if the task is longer, or sometimes they have to complete 10 questions as homework or learn 5 fill in the blanks, always important to chunk it. Give them in small parts. If you tell that you have to write 5 pages, the moment they see that quantity, it becomes overwhelming for them. And if you tell them you're going to take it step by step, and even works or completing their notebooks and classworks, usually more amount of time is given to them. They get distracted very easily. being on the task is difficult, careless mistakes get peaked. So for that reason, extra time is given for them to complete the work, as well as chunking of the information. Longer informations or longer instructions also are broken down into smaller pieces so that they could complete it. And once they complete that piece, again a movement break comes in between. Breaks are not longer, but yes, shorter ones where they could rewind themselves, rejuvenate, and come back to the task. Also, if I say break, please do not include gadget time in between. Very difficult for them to move from the gadget and come back to their task. So it could just be water break, having the snack, move around, talking to you, or playing with their toy also. But please do avoid the screen time or the gadget breaks in between tasks. So chunking will definitely help you where you're breaking down into easier steps.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing practical tips that we can all implement at our respective settings. Thank you so much for an educative and informative workshop today, and also thank you audience for actively participating throughout today's session. I've seen that the feedback link has been shared with you all already. I'll request my team member to again share the feedback link with you all. Do take a moment out and let us know how effective this session has been for you so that we can improve the outcomes and the experience for all of you with us. Ma'am, I'd like to check with you your final words to share with all our participants today.
So, as always, I really enjoyed having you all to be so engaging with me throughout the session, and a lot of insights I also learned from you. And when I tell you that you have to work with ADHD, it's very important to be patient. Being patient with these children is important because a lot of time and effort goes. And if we ourselves, as educators or parents, lose patience, it would be difficult for us to help these children. Yes, they would get there, they have their own strengths, but be patient and accepting of them. That will definitely make it an easier sale for you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Patience and consistency is the key to bringing out more impact in the children's life. I think with that note, we'll end today's session. But before we end today's session, I'd like to share with all our participants that we have an upcoming session on the 17th of February on prerequisites to improve handwriting skills for children with special needs, conducted by Dr. Neeta Mehta. Following that, we have another session on the 5th of March on strategies and techniques to improve handwriting skills for children with academic challenges and special needs. The timing for the session would be 4:30 p.m. Indian time, 6 p.m. Indonesian time, 7 p.m. Singapore and Philippines time. The link for it is being shared right now in the chat box. Do register yourself and book your slots now because we have limited slots available. Until we see you for the next time, it's a big bye from Team Ability. Stay safe. Take care, all of you.